But we start in Egypt, where there's scenes of celebration in Tahrir Square once again in Cairo. Hundreds of thousands of people are gathered there this Friday. It's all part of a nationwide march of victory called to celebrate a week since the end of Hosni Mubarak's 30-year rule, and also to remember the hundreds killed during the 18-day uprising. Let's speak to AlJazeera's Hoda Abdelhamid, who's overlooking Tahrir Square right now. Hoda, it's extremely loud behind you. Give us a sense of what's been happening in Tahrir Square over the last few hours.
Well, as you said, it's extremely loud and there is a party going on. The square started filling up quite early this morning, but just before the Friday prayer, it was absolutely packed. And I have to tell you, I just looked around on all the side streets and they are as packed as you can see. Now, earlier there was a prayer. It was led by Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi. Now, he is a controversial figure somehow because he does have some sort of links with the Muslim Brotherhood. He is considered as the intellectual mentor of the Muslim Brotherhood. Nevertheless, he was invited on the square by the coalition of the revolutionary youth, as they call themselves, because he did show a lot of support to the revolt when they were happening. He did give momentum to the protest. And since we've been having a mixture of what I would say political slogan, patriotic singing, and then just festivities. A lot of slogans reminding everybody that President Mubarak gone, Vice President Omar Suleiman gone, is just the beginning. There is a whole list of demands, and those lists need to be fulfilled. Basically, reminding the army that the momentum is still there and that they can bring back as many people as they want to Liberation Square.
So it's not just about celebrating the end of Mubarak's rule harder today, it's also about keeping the pressure on the military council. Are the people satisfied with the pace of change so far?
I think opinions are split on that. The military issued 5 communiques so far. It did dissolve the parliament. It did say that there will be a different government next week. It did nominate a committee to go about constitutional amendments. So it did sort of indicate in its communiques that it's following or responding to demands of the people. However, some people say that the military is not being transparent enough, is not being inclusive enough. For example, they point to the fact that the committee that's charged with rewriting those articles of the Constitution does not include anyone from the youth or does not include anyone from the opposition parties. So there is a bit of worry about really how transparent is the military, or whether the military will try to save some sort of the system that's already in place. And what the people are saying here is that they want the entire system to change. They want accountability, they want justice, they want a long list of things. So certainly they are planning to keep the pressure whenever needed or whenever they don't understand what's the message coming out of the military.
So the people down in Tahrir Square, Hoda, not convinced that the revolution has attained its goals. Thank you very much, Hoda Abdelhamid, reporting there live from the Egyptian capital. Now, Jamal El-Shail is in Alexandria, meanwhile, where residents of Egypt's second largest city are also holding a rally this Friday.
It's exactly 1 week on since pro-democracy protesters managed to oust former President Mubarak in what's being labeled the Egyptian People's Revolution. Tens of thousands of people continue to gather here in Alexandria because they say the blood of those spilled, those they're calling martyrs, must not be forgotten. They say they will continue to demonstrate until Mubarak himself and members of the previous regime are put on trial for the death of hundreds of pro-democracy activists. And that billions of dollars worth of money they claim was embezzled by Mubarak and his government is returned. They say they will continue to come out onto the streets every Friday until those people are put on trial and until that money is returned. And until then, the revolution, they say, will not be successful.
In Bahrain, hundreds have taken to the streets in support of the country's ruling monarchy. State television showed people waving flags and holding up pictures of the king as they march in the capital, Manama. But Elsewhere in the country, worshippers at Friday prayers chanted slogans against the ruling monarchy. At one Shia mosque, the country's top cleric described Thursday's deadly crackdown on pro-reform protesters as, quote, a massacre. Ayatollah Sheikh Isa Qasim said the government's actions had shut the door to dialogue.
We've come to a time of deciding whether we surrender to the government and let it commit massacres against us. The world has to bear responsibility after this nation first takes responsibility for itself.
Now, there's been anti-government protests in various cities across Libya. Soldiers have been deployed in the eastern city of Benghazi, which is the country's second largest city. It's seen violent protests with more than 20 killed by security forces in the last few days. Reports are also emerging that another city, Baida, has been overtaken by anti-government protesters. Security forces are said to have been rapidly reinforced there. Ahmed Al-Berkawi is joining us right now on the line from Benghazi, Libya's second largest city. Do tell us what's been happening in Benghazi over the last few hours.
What's happening in Benghazi is a big massacre. A big massacre. People are being killed on the streets. People are demonstrating peacefully. They are asking for a decent life, not more than a decent life. And they are being killed. Kids as young as 8 years old are being killed on the streets.
So, okay, just to tell our viewers, this is an eyewitness on the line with us from Benghazi, Libya's second largest city. Of course, we can't verify this information at this stage. You mentioned a number of people killed. How many have been killed exactly in the last few days? Yes, go on.
Between last night and today, 28 people.
Okay.
Today, 13 bodies. Where the funeral of 13 bodies, the people, thousands of people were marching to the graveyard. The government killed around 4 of them. 4 of them were killed this afternoon. The total killed until now that we know of are 28 between last night and today.
So are the protests continuing in Benghazi today?
Protests are all over Benghazi. There is in front of me, in front of the main court in Benghazi, more than 50,000 people, women, children, judges, lawyers, engineers, all the Libyan people are out. The fear has been broken. The Libyan people have no more fear.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, Ahmed Al-Berkawi, an eyewitness there from Libya's second largest city, Benghazi, telling us about the unrest there. Of course, again, Al Jazeera can't independently verify this information. In Yemen, a so-called Friday of Rage has drawn thousands of protesters. 6 people have been killed across several cities in the country. One of the deaths took place after a hand grenade was thrown at protesters in the city of Taiz. It's the 8th straight day of protests in Yemen.